Greetings and salutations. So today, you can tell by the title of the video that we're going to talk about the Harbor Freight bead roller. And you might ask yourself, well, what's a bead roller? And that's a great question. So briefly, what a bead roller is a machine that rolls beads in the metal. I'll illustrate that in a second. But this particular piece of equipment right here, I bought at Harbor Freight. I bought it like back in 2003. And for what I paid for this, I think I paid right around $100 for this thing back in 2003. And for what this thing costs and what comes with it, it's a value. Most people that are going to buy this tool are going to use it on a project, and when they're done with that project, they'll probably go to eBay or Craigslist and get rid of it, because they're done with it, and they don't want to spend thousands of dollars to buy a professional grade tool. Why would you do that when you only need to run 30 or 40 feet of bead, and you can get that accomplished with a $120 or $130 tool? So for what this is, it's a pretty good value. It does what it's intended to do. As long as you know what the limitations are, it'll work perfectly for you. So if you're ever interested in buying a bead roller, if you're a hobbyist, you're going to use this occasionally, don't spend the thousands of dollars it's going to cost to buy a Pexto bead roller, because the one set of dies for the Pexto will cost more than this entire contraption. That being said, the Pexto will outperform this every day of the week. Hands down. You get what you pay for. If you know that going in, and all you're trying to do is build a patch for your floor pan in your car, and you're never going to see it, but you need to add a couple of beads in there to match the beads that were there, this will do it. It'll be your huckleberry. But there are some limitations and there are some design flaws with this machine that should be addressed and can be addressed by ultimately the end user. So let's get the camera down here so you can see what I'm talking about, and we'll talk about some of the upgrades that you might want to consider making if you're so inclined to buy this tool. The first thing I want to point out are the dies, and there are several different kinds of dies that come with it. They come with a set of bead dies that rolls a bead in something, and this is more of a step die that rolls a step into something. I use these dies to make this piece, and then I use the bead roll, this die here, to roll these beads into this little flapper door. If you don't know what this is, that's going to be featured in an upcoming bus video. If that looks familiar, you know what this is all about. You got to start with some dies, and this comes with an assortment of dies. I think it came with 6 sets of dies. There's a cutting die, there's different size of bead dies, and there's a couple of sizes of step dies. And those are just held in place with a simple set screw. There's a flat spot on this shaft, and then you come over here and you got a crank, and you crank this thing and you push your metal through that side and through the beads into the dies, and it creates the bead. So why would you need to roll a bead into a piece of metal? Well, this is a piece of 20 gauge, and it's a small enough piece, but even a small piece is pretty flimsy, right? So if you were to use this, like say in a structural part of the vehicle, like say the floor pan, you're making a floor pan panel and you're going to bolt a seat to this. Well, if you didn't add any kind of beads into this, it wouldn't be very strong. Beads will add some rigidity to this piece of metal, right? So I'm not going to swap these dies out, but I'll just roll a step bead into this and show you what I'm talking about. So by rolling those beads in there, it makes it really stiff, right? So now that's almost a structural number. If I were to push on this, I'd have to actually kink this to make it bend. Does that make any sense? This is really designed to run beads in up to 18 gauge. And the problem is that the thicker the material, the more pressure it takes to make the bead, and the more pressure you put on this machine, the more this thing wants to deflect. And when it deflects, it releases pressure off the die, and it creates irregularities in the depth of of the bead, and it just makes it hard to use because this thing's flopping all over the place. So you set your depth of, there's a bolt back here you loosen up that holds this block on, this block that this axle rides on, and this will go up and down, right? And then you set your depth with this nut right here. This machine works best with two people, one person to feed the material and another person to turn the crank. So one of the things that I'm going to do in the future is motorize this thing. But here's some of the problems with this design. First of all, the more pressure you put on it, the more this top die wants to deflect. Second of all, these blocks are not bushed. It's just a hole drilled through this block and the axle shafts run through it. This is just, looks like hot rolled steel. It's not hardened or anything like that. And there's no way to lubricate these other than just squirting oil on it. So there's no grease zerks on here, and I'll put a grease zerk on each one of these so you can lubricate these periodically. The other thing I want to do is motorize this and have a variable speed motor so this thing spins really slow and reversible, so I can do this a solo meal, because it's really difficult to feed a piece of material into this while you're turning a crank that looks like it's roughly a foot long. So you got 2 feet of throw and you're trying to feed this thing. It's just really difficult. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to get rid of this deflection, and I'm going to do that by using this 1-inch square bar. I'm going to weld it onto the back of this. First thing you need to do, and I'll roll some footage in here right now that I took months ago of me stripping the paint off the back side of this. And then after I get these pieces cut, I'm going to take these blocks off and take this whole thing apart so it's just stripped down to this. And I'm going to weld those pieces of tubing onto the back side of this, and hopefully that will stiffen it up enough where it doesn't deflect. And the other thing I want to do is I want to take this bolt out, this metric bolt that has some really janky threads cut into it. Bolt, re-drill and tap this, a bigger size with a longer bolt with a T-handle on it, so I can adjust this without using a wrench. And then the other thing I want to do is I'll put a spring on here. When you release the pressure off the adjustment bolt, it automatically wants to lift this upper die up and off the work so you can remove it. So let's get started with cutting the metal. That sucks. I ran out of gas. I need to go get some more gas. Nah, screw that. I'm just gonna stick weld it. Alright. A lot less deflection. I'm gonna go down to Tractor Supply. I'm going to see about getting some more of these grease zerks, and I'm going to pull these apart and drill them and put the grease zerks in them. I have grease zerks in here now, and you notice that the handle's on the other end. It's not because I moved everything and inverted it. It's because originally this was the top die, and now I've made it the bottom die. So rather than have hook up a spring, I've seen this done before where people have hooked up a spring to lift this, like imagine this was here, to lift with a spring, lift this up off the work. And instead of doing that, I made this the drive roll. It's probably not the right thing to do, but it's the way I'm going to do it. And then just kind of loosely tighten this bolt in the back, and then I can just pull that away, right? Pull that out of the way. Drop the die down, take the piece out. Once I get another bottle of gas, I'll finish modifying this bolt and put either a T-handle on it or a crank handle so I can do that up really quick. And then I got to figure out what I'm going to do for a drive system here. I've seen people use wiper motors, and I don't want to do that. I want to use some kind of gear reduction thingamajig. See if I can find something on eBay. Or probably the best thing to do is to use a gear reduction motor, and that will probably cost more than 10 of these combined. But I'll keep my eyes open, and if you got any ideas of how I can do that, post in the comment section. Let's see how it works. There you have it. That's what the bead roller's for. A little massaging and flanging, and that will stiffen up even better, and I could use that for something. I don't know what, but it's just a test piece. I think it works a lot better now. So look for an update video on that probably next year, whenever I get around to doing the drive setup on it. So if you found this video to be informative and entertaining, please give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate that very much. And if it was a waste of your time, I apologize for wasting your time. That was not my intention. And go ahead and click down. Either way is okay with me. Share this video if you're so inclined with your vast social media network. And as always, fellas, you have fun, stay safe, shoot straight, keep your powder dry, have a splendid day. Probably a good idea to wear gloves when you're working with metal. Just saying.